My name is Sharon Moreno. I'm 28 years old, and if you had asked me a year ago what my life looked like, I would have told you I was building a future with the man I loved. I worked as an IT consultant, steady job, good pay, decent apartment in the city, nothing flashy, nothing extravagant, just stability. And for me, stability was love expressed through consistency. Kevin and I had been together for 3 years. He was ambitious, the kind of man who thrived on energy connections and appearances. When he lost his entry-level job early in our relationship, I stepped in without hesitation. I covered his rent, paid for his courses to upskill, even turned down a promotion that would have required me to relocate because he told me, "Babe, I need you here while I build my career." I believed we were a team. I came home from 12-hour days exhausted from debugging code while he dressed in sharp blazers for networking mixers, returning late at night, with stories of who he met and how game-changing the introductions were. I smiled, supported, and told myself this is what love looks like, holding someone up until they can stand on their own. But slowly things began to shift. His comments became little cuts I brushed off at first. "Why don't you dress sharper? My friends' girlfriends always look so put together. You should network more. Sitting behind a screen all day doesn't impress anyone." I told myself he was stressed, that the ambition I admired was just spilling over in ugly ways. We weren't perfect, but I was committed. I imagined myself saying yes someday if he proposed. And then one Friday night, it all shattered. The sushi restaurant was his idea. I hated sushi. The raw fish, the overpriced rolls, the dim lights that made everyone look like they were trying too hard. It wasn't me. But Kevin insisted it's good for us to be seen at places like this. So I went. I tried to make small talk. Rough week. "Tell me about that presentation you were prepping." He barely looked up from his phone, fidgeting, checking his watch. The waiter dropped off our California rolls, and he hadn't even touched the edamame. Something in the air felt heavy wrong. Finally, he set his chopsticks down and looked at me with this smile, soft, almost pitying. I thought maybe he was going to propose. My heart skipped. Instead, he leaned forward and said, "Can I be honest, Sharon? My friends are embarrassed for me when I bring you around." The words didn't make sense at first. Embarrassed, I laughed lightly, waiting for the punchline. But his face stayed stone serious. "You're not impressive," he continued, lowering his voice as though confiding some secret truth. "Like Sarah's boyfriend is a surgeon. He travels to conferences, always has stories. Jess's guy has a boat, takes her away on weekends. And you're just nice. What do I tell people about you? That you sit behind a computer all day?" That's it. It's humiliating. The sushi roll on my plate blurred in front of me. Humiliating. After 3 years of sacrifice, love, support, and devotion, I was humiliating to him. I tried to keep my voice steady. "So this is about how I look to your friends." He sighed, as if I was too slow to grasp it. "It's more than that. I've met someone, Sharon. At that networking event last month, the one you skipped because you were tired. Her name's Vanessa. She's in venture capital. She drives a Tesla. She knows everyone. With her, I feel like I'm elevating. With you, it feels like settling." Settling. He said it like he was doing me a kindness by saying it out loud. My chest felt hollow, like the oxygen had been vacuumed out of the room, but I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I placed my chopsticks down carefully, as though setting fragile glass onto a table. I slid my half of the bill across to him, stood up, and reached for my coat. His eyes widened slightly, as if he expected me to scream, to beg, to fight for him. But all I said was, "Okay, Kevin. Good luck with that." Then I turned and I walked out. The night air was sharp and cool, hitting my lungs like a wake-up call. Behind me, laughter and clinking glasses echoed from the restaurant. I didn't look back once. My heart was pounding, but my steps were steady. That was the last time I saw Kevin for months. I didn't cry that night. Not when I walked the few blocks back to my car. Not when I drove in silence through the glittering streets of downtown headlights and billboards blurring into streaks. Not even when I opened the door to my apartment, the place I had once called our safe haven. But when I finally sat on the couch, coat still on, I poured a glass of whiskey with shaking hands and stared at the walls. That's when the weight of it pressed down. 3 years. 3 years of sacrifice, of building a future together, of holding him up when he had nothing. And in return, I was told I was humiliating. My phone buzzed with the notification and Instagram tag. Kevin had already posted a picture from the restaurant, smiling with his friends after I left as though nothing had happened. I turned the phone face down, bile rising in my throat. The next morning, I didn't get out of bed until noon. My chest felt heavy, my mind replaying every moment. The time I skipped a company trip to stay by his side during a job interview. The necklace I had saved for with his initials engraved that he wore once and shoved into a drawer. The birthday party where his friends barely acknowledged me while he whispered, "Mingle more next time, Sharon." All the signs had been there. His late nights, his eyes on his phone during our dinners, the sudden distance in his voice. I told myself he was busy, that this was a phase. But the truth was simpler. He had been preparing to discard me. That Sunday, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. My eyes were swollen, my hair tangled, my face pale. And in the silence, his words echoed, "You're not impressive. You're humiliating." Something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. I whispered to my reflection, "He called you unimpressive. Prove him wrong." Not for him, not to win him back. For me. The first thing I did was block him. Phone, social media, email. I even changed the locks on my apartment door, not because I thought he'd come back, but because I wanted nothing that tied me to him. Then I went back to the very opportunity I'd once given up for him, the promotion at my firm. I reapplied. 2 weeks later, I got it. Senior consultant, a pay bump, remote flexibility. I moved into a new apartment across town. Smaller, cleaner, stripped of any memory of him. White walls, wooden floors, no clutter. It felt like breathing fresh air for the first time in years. But healing wasn't as cinematic as packing boxes and getting a raise. Some nights, the loneliness still gnawed at me. I'd wake at 2 a.m. with tears on my face, reaching instinctively for someone who wasn't there anymore. Still, each morning I forced myself to run. At first it was barely half a mile before I was bent over gasping. But each day I went a little further. By week 3 I could run 2 miles without stopping. By month's end 5. The runs weren't just about fitness, they were about reclaiming control. With every step pounding the pavement, I told myself, "You are not the woman he said you were, you are more." Work became my anchor. I threw myself into projects, leading meetings, landing clients. For the first time, my colleagues looked at me, not as someone dependable in the background, but as a leader. One evening, as I shut my laptop after a 12-hour day, I realized I hadn't thought about Kevin once. That realization lit something inside me. If he had stayed, I might never have applied for that promotion. I might never have run those miles. I might never have realized that stability and strength weren't boring. They were the foundation of becoming unstoppable. One night, standing in my new apartment, a single lamp casting light across the room, I looked at my reflection again. My hair was damp from a post-run shower, my skin flushed, my body leaner, my eyes brighter. I didn't see the broken woman from weeks ago. I saw someone rebuilding herself from the ground up. I whispered again, this time louder, steadier. "If stability is boring, then I'll make boring powerful." For the first time in months, I smiled. The months that followed weren't easy, but they were defining. Pain had burned me hollow, but in that emptiness, there was room to build something new. I started with discipline. Each morning, my alarm rang at 6 a.m. I laced up my sneakers, even when my body screamed to stay in bed. The city streets were still gray, shop shutters closed, dew clinging to the sidewalks. My breath clouded in the cool dawn air as I pushed myself further each day. By the 3rd month, my body felt stronger, my lungs steadier, my heart lighter. At the gym, I added weights. The soft curves Kevin once mocked as safe hardened into strength. I wasn't building myself for approval anymore. I was building myself to feel unshakable. Every curl, every squat, every mile was a rebellion against the version of me he tried to define. Work thrived too. I learned to speak up in meetings, no longer letting my ideas drown in the background. Clients began asking for me, specifically trusting my clear solutions over polished jargon. My boss pulled me aside one Friday afternoon. "Sharon, you've stepped into yourself. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Hearing that felt like a quiet victory. Then came the side hustle. It started almost accidentally. A colleague's friend needed freelance coding help for a startup app. I took it on. The pay was better than I expected. Soon referrals trickled in. Within 6 months, my side projects alone were earning me more than my old salary. The bank account grew, but more importantly, so did my confidence. Kevin once said I wasn't impressive, but now I was building a life that even he couldn't have imagined for me. And then there was the group hike. It was a crisp Saturday morning, golden sunlight spilling through the trees. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. I joined a local hiking group to push myself beyond running and weights craving nature instead of city concrete. That's where I met him, Michael. He wasn't loud or flashy, no designer sneakers, no pretentious energy, just a worn backpack, a quick smile, and an easy way of making conversation. We ended up walking side by side, laughing about how terrible instant coffee tastes on early hikes. It was effortless, no need to impress, no need to perform. When he asked what I did, I told him simply, "IT consultant, and I do some coding for startups." He didn't blink, didn't compare me to anyone. He just said, "That's awesome. You must be good at problem solving. I can barely fix my printer." It sounds silly, but that line made me laugh harder than I had in months. A week later, he invited me to a small creative meetup, not a networking circus full of champagne glasses and status chasers like Kevin used to drag me to. This was different people sharing projects, art ideas. The air smelled of coffee, not desperation. Michael introduced me to friends who cared about stories, not resumes. That night, as I walked home, I realized I hadn't thought once about how I looked or whether anyone was impressed. I was simply present. Our first real date wasn't at a rooftop bar or a trendy restaurant. It was a picnic in the park. He brought homemade sandwiches, a blanket, and a deck of cards. The simplicity of it nearly made me cry. At one point, as I was laughing at my losing streak in cards, he leaned back on his elbows and said, "You know what I like about you, Sharon? You're grounded. That's rare." Grounded, not boring, not humiliating, grounded. That one word felt like a balm over every wound Kevin had left behind. Meanwhile, online, my quiet rebuild didn't go unnoticed. I wasn't flashy, but I posted snapshots of hikes, new recipes, the occasional project milestone. Slowly, likes and comments trickled in. Not from Kevin, but from his old circle, Sarah, Jess, the same women who once looked down on me at parties. "Looking strong, Sharon. Wow, impressive project." I ignored most of it. It wasn't about them anymore. But a quiet irony simmered beneath it all. While Kevin had traded me in for someone more impressive, the same people he wanted to impress were now watching me, not him. One evening, as Michael and I packed up after another simple picnic, he asked gently, "So, do you ever hear from your ex?" I shook my head, staring out at the orange horizon. Not yet, but something tells me, one day I will. The words felt prophetic, like the calm before a storm. It was about 4 months after the sushi night when I first heard the whispers. Chris, the only mutual friend who hadn't chosen sides, dropped the news casually over coffee. Kevin's all over social media with Vanessa. Weekend trips, champagne, Tesla selfies. He's calling her his business partner, says they're starting a company together. I stirred my latte slowly, keeping my expression neutral. Good for him, I said, though inside there was a bitter twist. Kevin had moved on fast, flaunting the power couple image I had never been flashy enough to provide. But deep down I knew. Things too perfect, too polished, rarely last. Weeks later, the cracks began to show. One evening, I was finishing a late-night coding session when Sarah, the same. Sarah, who once ignored me at Kevin's birthday party, liked one of my posts on LinkedIn. Then another. A hiking picture. A project update. Odd, I thought. The next day, Chris texted again. "You didn't hear this from me, but Vanessa isn't what she claims. That whole venture capitalist thing, smoke and mirrors. She's been propping up her image with borrowed money. And Kevin. He quit his stable job to follow her." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the message, a strange mix of disbelief and inevitability settling in. From what I pieced together through whispers and mutuals, Vanessa was a con artist of sorts. She dazzled rooms with Tesla rides and stories about closing deals, but in reality, she was drowning in debt from failed ventures. Kevin had fallen for it completely. He bragged about their startup, convinced he was on the verge of success. Meanwhile, Vanessa drained his accounts, first small loans, then credit cards, then rent money. The same Kevin who once sneered at me for being boring and stable was now funding a fantasy. By month 6, the truth detonated. Vanessa disappeared. Gone. She blocked his number, left him with shared bills, and skipped town. The startup folded overnight. Suddenly, Kevin was alone, broke and abandoned. Meanwhile, my life had never been steadier. I'd just landed my biggest freelance client yet, a tech startup that valued substance over shine. The kind of project Kevin would have dismissed as unimpressive, but the paycheck. It spoke volumes. I crossed a finish line at my first half marathon that same month, sweat pouring down my face, lungs on fire, but a smile stretching wide. I had built strength inside and out. Michael was there waiting with a water bottle clapping and grinning, like I'd just won an Olympic medal. Told you you'd crush it, he said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of sun and grass. And yet, karma wasn't done. A week later, Chris leaned across the bar table during one of our catch-ups. His voice dropped low. Kevin's not doing great. Word is he's couch surfing now. Vanessa wiped him out. And his friends. They've started pulling away. It's awkward, I guess. Status disappears fast when the money does. I sipped my drink slowly, a strange calm washing over me. Once that news would have torn me apart, either from guilt or misplaced longing. But now, I felt nothing. Nothing but a quiet, steady certainty that the universe had handled it for me. That night, scrolling through my muted social feeds, I found one of Kevin's latest posts. No Tesla, no champagne, just a vague caption. Sometimes you find out who's real when everything falls apart. For a moment, I stared at the screen, and then I closed the app. Set my phone down and turned to Michael, who was sketching designs at my kitchen table. "Want to go for a walk?" I asked. He looked up, smiled, and nodded. As we stepped out into the cool evening, our hands brushing before linking together, I realized something profound. Kevin's chaos no longer had a place in my story. But I knew one day, when the loneliness became unbearable for him, he would come knocking. And when he did, I'd be ready. It started quietly. A vibration at 2:07 a.m. lit up my nightstand. Groggy, I reached for my phone, expecting a calendar reminder, or maybe a work email. Instead, the name on the screen froze me, Kevin. Blocked months ago. He must have found another number. The message glared. "Hey, Sharon, been thinking about us. Can we talk?" My chest tightened, not from longing, but from the sting of intrusion. After everything, he still thought he could just slip back in with a late-night text. I didn't reply. 2 nights later, another one. "I know I messed up. Vanessa was a mistake. I should have appreciated you when I had you. You were my stability." Stability. The very word he'd once spat like it was an insult. Now it was his lifeline. I locked my phone, slid it face down, and whispered into the dark. Too late. But he didn't stop. The messages grew longer, more desperate. "I miss your cooking. Remember your pasta nights? Vanessa never cared about real things like that." My friends turned their backs on me. "You're the only one who ever really cared. Sharon, please, I need you." Need. Not want. Not love. Need. I kept silent. Then came the middlemen. One afternoon, Sarah texted me out of nowhere. "Hey, stranger, Kevin's really hurting. Maybe just hear him out. He's changed." I nearly laughed. Changed. He hadn't changed. He was just broken in a way that made him crawl. I typed a short reply, not interested. Hope he finds peace. That night, Jess called, her voice dripping with condescension. "Come on, Sharon, don't be petty. He thought he was upgrading, and yeah, it blew up. But you owe him some closure after 3 years." I let the silence stretch until she shifted uncomfortably on the other end. Then I said calmly, "No, Jess, I don't owe him anything," and hung up. But Kevin wasn't finished. One Sunday morning, Michael and I were at our favorite cafe, Sun, streaming through wide windows. The smell of fresh bread heavy in the air. We were laughing over a spilled cappuccino when a shadow fell across our table. "Sharon," the voice was cracked hollow. I turned, and there he was, Kevin. He looked nothing like the man who had once strutted into rooms with Vanessa on his arm. His hair was unkempt shirt, wrinkled eyes sunken. Desperation clung to him like a second skin. "Please," he stammered, voice trembling. "Just 5 minutes, that's all I ask." Michael tensed beside me, ready to intervene, but I raised a hand subtly. My heart thudded not with fear, but with an almost cold clarity. "What do you want, Kevin?" My tone was steady, unflinching. He sank into the empty chair without waiting for permission. Words tumbled from him jagged and fast. "Vanessa used me, took everything. My savings, my cards, my friends. They're gone. I see now you were the real thing. You were the one who mattered. I was stupid. Please, Sharon, we can start over. I need you." The cafe hummed around us, but in that small bubble, it was just him and me. I studied him. This broken man who once told me I humiliated him, who traded me for glitter and lies, now begging at my table. I leaned forward, my voice low but firm. "You once called me unimpressive. You said I embarrassed you. Look at yourself now, Kevin. Do you think I could ever go back to that?" His face crumpled, panic flickering. "I didn't mean it like that. I was pressured. My friends." I cut him off with a shake of my head. "No excuses. You made your choice. And so did I." I stood, slipping my hand into Michael's. "This is my life now. You don't belong in it." We walked out together, leaving Kevin slumped in the chair, eyes wide, mouth open, but powerless. As the cafe door closed behind us, sunlight spilled across my face. I felt lighter, stronger. For the first time, I realized rejecting him wasn't just about punishing him. It was about protecting the woman I had become. After that cafe encounter, something shifted in me. For months, I had been bracing myself for the possibility of seeing Kevin again, imagining what I'd say, how I'd feel. But when it finally happened, when I looked into his hollow eyes and heard his desperate pleas, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel longing. I felt nothing, and in that nothingness I found freedom. My days no longer carried his shadow. Mornings began with sunrise, runs the rhythm of my footsteps syncing with my breath. I stopped counting miles and started counting moments, the orange streak of dawn across the sky, the smell of fresh rain on the pavement, the burn in my calves that told me I was alive and moving forward. Work flourished. I was trusted with projects that once would have been handed to the more impressive faces in the room. I negotiated contracts with a steady voice and shook hands with confidence. The title on my email signature no longer felt like an achievement for someone else's approval, it felt like mine. And Michael? He became a constant. Not with fireworks or grand gestures, but with small grounding things. Warm tea waiting for me after late nights of coding. Sketches he'd leave on sticky notes for me to find in the morning. The way he laughed full and unrestrained when I beat him at cards during our picnics. It was simple, it was real, and it was enough. Kevin, meanwhile, didn't stop trying. Blocked on one number, he found another. Ignored on one platform, he created a new account. The messages changed in tone, first pleading, then angry. I can't believe you're this cold. After 3 years, you won't even meet me halfway. You're nothing without me. Don't forget that. Michael doesn't know you like I do. He'll leave just like everyone else. But his words, once sharp enough to pierce me now, fell flat. They were the last gasps of a drowning man flailing for anything to pull him back afloat. And I was no longer his lifeline. One evening, Michael and I were at a rooftop bar. Nothing fancy. Just a cozy spot with fairy lights strung overhead and a jazz band playing softly in the corner. Kevin showed up, again. This time his face wasn't just tired, it was hardened, resentful. He stepped up to our table, ignoring Michael completely, eyes locked on me. "How can you be so heartless?" he hissed. "You're really going to throw away 3 years like it was nothing. You think you're better than me now?" The air between us went still. The music faded to the background conversations around us muffled. I leaned back in my chair, calm, unflinching. "No, Kevin, I don't think I'm better than you. I think I'm better than who I used to be with you." For a second, his face twisted rage, shame, something he couldn't put into words. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, fists clenched at his sides. Michael reached over, his hands steady on mine. And just like that, Kevin's presence shrank to nothing. He stormed off, muttering under his breath, swallowed by the noise of the city night. Walking home later, Michael asked gently, "Does it ever get to you?" Seeing him like that, I thought for a moment before answering. "No," I said. "It reminds me why I chose myself, why I'll never go back." Because the truth was, Kevin's downfall wasn't my revenge. It was his own choices catching up with him. My revenge was quieter, simpler. It was peace. As weeks passed, the messages stopped. The sightings dwindled. His name stopped appearing in conversations. And slowly the man who once loomed so large in my world became a ghost, faded, irrelevant, powerless. Meanwhile, I kept living, laughing, building, loving. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt untouchable. It happened on a night I didn't expect. Chris invited me to his birthday low-key rooftop bar. String lights swaying in the evening breeze, laughter rolling across the crowd. Michael was at my side, hand warm against mine as we walked in. The moment we stepped inside, I felt it. The shift in the air, eyes turning toward me. Not in judgment, not in pity, just recognition. "Sharon." "You look incredible," Sarah called out, rushing over in a sequined dress. She hugged me tight, too tight, like we were old friends. Jess followed her smile, syrupy. "That promotion you posted about goals, seriously. You've been glowing lately." I smiled politely. These were the same women who once whispered that I wasn't enough. Now they hung on to my every word. But then I saw him. Kevin. He stood alone by the bar nursing a drink. His shirt wrinkled, his posture sagging. The shimmer was gone, no Tesla, no sparkling woman on his arm. Just a man stripped bare of the illusions he once wore like armor. When his eyes met mine, they widened. He set the glass down with a clink and made his way over. "Sharon," he said, voice shaky, "you look different, beautiful." I tilted my head, calm. "Do I know you?" The words hit him like a slap. His face crumpled. Sharon, come on, don't do this. It's me. Kevin. I let the silence stretch before I replied, voice even. Right, Kevin. From back then. He stepped closer, desperation spilling through every movement. I need you to know I'm sorry. For the sushi night. For the things I said. Vanessa destroyed me, but it opened my eyes. You were the only real thing I ever had. Please, can we try again? Even just talk. The crowd around us seemed to fade. I saw only him, the man who once called me humiliating, now humbled to ashes. I drew a breath steady and let my words slice clean. You said I wasn't impressive, that I embarrassed you. And now look at us. I'm thriving. You're begging. Tell me who should be embarrassed now. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He looked smaller somehow, shrinking under the weight of truth. I shook my head gently. I don't hate you, Kevin. I don't even pity you. You're just irrelevant. I turned, threading my arm through Michael's, and smiled at him. His eyes, steady and warm, told me everything I needed. I was exactly where I belonged. Behind me, Kevin's voice cracked one last time. You'll regret this. But the words bounced off me like rain on glass. I didn't even glance back. Later, as the party wound down, Sarah leaned close and whispered almost conspiratorial, "She's spiraling, you know. But you, Sharon, you've upgraded. Seriously." I just smiled, sipping my drink, her words rolling over me like distant thunder. Because the truth was, I didn't need validation anymore, not from Sarah, not from Jess, not from Kevin. I had already won, by choosing myself. Weeks passed after that party, and Kevin faded completely from my world. No more texts, no more sightings, no more whispers. It was as if the universe had finally closed the book on him. And me. My life kept unfolding, page by page, brighter with each chapter. Saturday mornings became sacred runs at sunrise, followed by coffee with Michael, who always had some half-finished sketch to show me. Evenings, I poured energy into my freelance work, watching it grow from side hustle to something I could be proud of. There was no performance, no need to impress, just quiet fulfillment. Sometimes, when I caught my reflection in the mirror, I barely recognized myself, not because I looked different, though I did, but because I felt different. This was the version of me Kevin never wanted to see, confident, self-assured, thriving, without his validation. One night, as Michael and I sat on the balcony of my apartment's city lights, twinkling in the distance, he asked me softly, "Do you ever think about him anymore?" I thought for a moment, sipping my tea, listening to the hum of traffic below. "Not really," I said. "He was a chapter, an ugly one, but if it hadn't ended the way it did, I don't think I'd be here now." Michael reached over, brushing his thumb across my hand. "Then maybe he did you a favor." I smiled faintly. Maybe. But the real favor was realizing I didn't need him or anyone to prove I was enough. Sometimes through mutuals, I still heard pieces of Kevin's story. How he struggled to find work again. How old friends avoided him at gatherings. How he posted cryptic messages about betrayal and second chances. But by then, he was just a ghost, a cautionary echo. Meanwhile, Sarah and Jess, those who once rolled their eyes at me, were suddenly the ones liking my posts, dropping comments like, "So proud of you," and inspiring. The irony didn't sting anymore. It barely registered. Because I wasn't living for their approval either. And here's what I learned the truth. I want anyone listening to carry with them. Sometimes betrayal isn't the end of you, it's the beginning. Kevin thought I was unimpressive, that I wasn't enough for his glittering world, but in reality, it was his world that was hollow. My so-called boring stability became the foundation of a life stronger, fuller, and freer than I ever imagined. The last time I saw him, his face was full of regret. Mine, full of peace. Because the sweetest revenge wasn't making him jealous. It wasn't proving him wrong to his face. It was simply living a life so authentic, so grounded, that his opinion no longer mattered. As I sit here now, looking back, I can say with certainty, he once said I wasn't impressive. But I never needed to be impressive for anyone else. I just needed to be enough for myself. And I am.